Hey, what's up, YouTube? Eddie Gray here, page 567 of the Logic User Guide. We're talking about channel strips today, how to remove entire channel strips, how to remove overlapped channel strips, all sorts of good stuff on the channel. Looks like we're talking about routing extensively, so if you don't know how to route within the Logic Mixer, we can help you with that. And then finally, looks like we're going to be talking about sends and how to use independent pan and all sorts of good stuff. Stay tuned. Let's get right into it. Here we go. Oh, wait. I see what's going on. Stand by. Very good. Oh, all right. I guess the music's not queuing today for whatever reason. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, we're just going to get right into it. We just always keep moving no matter what. We're going to get right into the session. So much to do, so much to talk about. I'm your host, Eddie Gray. I hope everybody's doing well out there. Let me see you guys. What's up? How's it going? All right. So we've been covering this subject for weeks and weeks on end, and we keep showing up. We keep coming back to the work. And we're taking our time looking at every single section and trying to see how we can apply this. It's not enough to know it. Obviously, we need to apply the information in order for it to be relevant within our music production workflows. Okay? All right, let's go into page 573 and let's dive right in. Good. Okay, so let's see here. From the top, yeah, working with channel strips. So at the very top here, it says that channel strip settings that are specific to each channel strip type. Now, remember, I've told you we have channel strip settings, but we also have patches. So those are two things that you want to keep in mind when we're talking about routing. So here's the first option, CST files. Now, the very first thing we want to pay attention to is that these are specific to each channel strip type. What does that mean? Well, we can use channel strip and we can save channel strips when it comes to your instruments, okay? And you'll find that native to Logic, we have GarageBand, CSTs, the Jam Pack categories. And where do I find these? Well, if you have a software instrument track selected, we can go into here, the channel strip setting. Let me see if I could turn on one thing that'll help us here. Good, right there. Okay, and when I click there, what ends up happening is that this menu pops up, and this is where the channel strip settings can be found. If we go into legacy, this is where we find all the stock stuff. Like, let's say we wanted to bring up a subtractive synth or a hybrid synth. Maybe you're looking for a specific acoustic piano sound. So this is everything that is saved within the GarageBand world here, right? All the instruments that you could find in there. So just another way of looking for instruments. Okay, let's keep going. Now, that's software instrument, right? But then we have audio. Okay, so when we're talking about audio, these channel strips, they offer effects routing. Okay, so for example, let's say you want to process drums or vocals or anything else. We can do that. For example, I have this guitar here. There's already some effects, but here's the dry signal. Let's take a listen. I actually think I bounced this to audio, so I don't know how dry this is, but let's take a listen. Yeah, so we've been working on this demo since we first started, but when I click up here and then I go into legacy, it doesn't matter if you go to Logic or what have you, but we can treat this audio. Now, this is an electric guitar, so we're probably going to want something that's crunchy or distorted. Let's do something kind of out of the ordinary. So we're going to go to distortion, fuzz. And why would you use these? Number one, you don't know how to mix. Number two, you just need some ideas, maybe a good starting point, a bookmark, if you will. Like, you don't necessarily want to keep the treatment, but you just need something in place. Let's listen to this. So it's very different from where we started. Of course, we can always use the trick that I learned from my mentor, Matt Thorne, where we bounce this to audio and we bounce the rest of the track to audio and we keep this original clean so that the song starts off a bit cleaner. And then when the drums come in, it bumps a little bit more. So let's try that technique out. The way I'll do this is select this. I'll hit Shift F. Is it just, oh no, I'm sorry. Shift Command F. No. Is it Control Shift F? Yes. And that's going to select all the following on the same track. I'll deselect the region that I want to keep in there. So I just held Shift and I clicked one time over. I'll hit Control B and then we'll just render this. So what's going to happen is all the distorted fuzzy guitars will be placed on a new track, and then I will bypass the original sound. So I have my clean signal here, and we should have some nice variety going into this A section. So here we go. So you see how that created a nice transition, right? So that's a pretty good trick that we can use there. I guess I'll keep it for now. If we want to change it later, we can. Okay, so that's in terms of audio, we're treating the audio, yeah? Software instruments, we're instantiating an instrument, right? Let's say you want pianos, strings, all of it here. Okay, let's see. Similarly, when it comes to, so now software instruments, we have audio tracks, and now we're talking about output and auxiliary channel strips. Okay, so then we should probably highlight these three to make this easy to understand. So let's see, instrument channel strips is the first. Yeah, I just want to make it really easy so that when you start working on it, you know what to look for. So really there's just a couple. Instrument channel strips, MIDI, audio channel strips, treatment, and then output and auxiliary channel strips. What is this for? Particularly for mastering or parallel processing or sweetening processes. So what that looks like is a couple different ways, but the output, which is the stereo output here on the right channel strip inspector here, you guys see this right here? So here I've gone ahead and saved several CST files because I love to master. And I love different techniques, and sometimes I like to go really aggressive, sometimes really subtle. Of course, different genres of music are going to require different forms of mastering. And so that is your output channel strip. But what about the auxiliary? Well, do you guys know about track stacks, grouping stacks? If I was to create a track stack from the drums, all in red, for example, right? Shift Command D. Gives me a track stack. Why isn't it rendering? I wonder if it's because I have a folder here. Let's unpack and merge. Okay, let's see how this turns out. Always an adventure with Logic Pro. Yeah, so that was happening because I had these folder tracks. Let me go ahead and get rid of this part, which I thought I muted. And so again, we're creating a track stack. We don't want a folder stack because there's no treatment. And this is a VCA file track, not a auxiliary, whereas the summing stack is going to utilize the auxiliary. How do I know? Look at this symbol right here. This symbol usually signifies auxiliary. How do I know that? Well, when we go into the mixer, you can see that Logic automatically creates this insignia when I create buses. So let's create a random bus. Let's call it 18. Okay, there's that symbol right there. So that's, I'm just kind of showing you what to look out for, right? So there we have an auxiliary. We can save auxiliary stacks. So for example, if you want to treat the hi-hat, or let's go into spaces, large spaces. Okay, let's we select groups. I'll do drum kit, chamber kit. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so the same channel strips, the audio tracks are still here. They're still contained and nested inside of this track stack, but I changed the overall treatment, right? And so let's listen. This is before the treatment. So it sounds a lot more wet, whereas the stuff I have, before the channel strip, it sounds very clean. So you may want that sound, but maybe just not as much. So you can take that wet knob and bring it down a little bit. Yeah, I personally like just a little bit of reverb. Unless you have it just on the snare or something like that, then that could work. But in this case, I have one loop that's covering the entire drum part, and then I have one shaker right here. Okay, good. All right, so that makes sense. We have the routing for the audio channel strips. We have the CSTs for the software instruments, and then for the auxiliaries and for the outputs. So we've simplified that whole thing. Now, of course, you're going to have to go through the learning and find all of these things yourself, and you will. Looks like we can load, copy, paste, save, reset, delete all of these if we want. And then here at the bottom, it says you can remotely switch between channel strips. Okay, we can switch between channel strips by sending MIDI program changes. Wow. So let's say you're performing, and I'm assuming this is the application. I don't see anything here, but just by the pushing a button, you can switch over into a new sound. Also, this could just be a programming feature that you just like to do. So to use this feature, you need to save a channel strip setting as a performance. So in order to switch between your channel strip settings, you have to hit the key command next channel strip setting, which is shift forward and back bracket. So you can assign that to a key command, which I'm going to do right now. Do you see how the channel strip is changing, right? And where is it getting its cue from? Well, you have to remember that these are all part of a specific group inside of the logic and legacy settings, right? These come with logic. How do I know that? Well, remember, I was sifting through the channel strip settings and I went in here. So all of these are available inside there as well. If we go into drums and percussion, for example, you'll see that this updates, and the same thing goes here. Everything that you can find within the channel strip settings is contained inside of the library. This is why this can be kind of confusing, because then we also have patches. But again, my job is just to kind of show you the ropes and why it's working this way. And then, of course, you'll find and formulate your own way of working. So we have all the channel strip settings in here. And then additionally, we have user patches up here. Let me Command Z. Yeah. What I just did here, let's close the library Y and the inspector I. Okay, so let's keep moving here. How do we load a channel strip? We click on the CST, the channel strip setting lane, right? We open it up. Looks like we can copy and do all sorts of great stuff. Then click the blue triangle that appears left of the settings in the inspector channels. The library updates to show good. Okay, so if you want to, let's open up this. We can click on the blue triangle, which is right here, and the information will be updated accordingly inside of the library. So if I don't do that, for example, let's go here. Let me see if I close. Okay, so as of right now, within the left channel strip inspector, nothing is selected, right? And if I open up the library, now we start to see some behavior reflected here. But originally, when I closed everything, let's go back up here to the auxiliary track. I'll hit I, nothing selected. I hit Y. Now we start to see that logic is looking at something. So this is a direct view into something. In this case, all of my channel strip settings or all of the library's offerings, if I use this slider, the bottom here of the library to bring me back to the beginning, right? This is everything that Logic has available inside, including all of the GarageBand and Jam Pack stuff, okay? And then if I wanted to look at other information, I would use that disclosure triangle, let's say over the plugin that shows me all the presets inside of there. So yeah, really nice way to just navigate the workspace if you're looking for channel strip settings. So yeah, by hitting shift forward and back bracket, you can shift through these. Looks like you can copy and paste as well. So let's say I'm really into the sound of my drums. I can click here and I can copy the channel strip, and let's go ahead and paste this on the, I have it set to a key command. Good. And so then now, even though we're looking at this drum icon, it's not actually going to play drums. It's still the shaker that you heard before. But because I copied the channel strip, it took the icon that was on track number 2. So I don't have to utilize this icon. I can control click it, and then, you know, however you want to do it, but I'll just go to no icon. Okay, cool. So we now know how to copy and paste. Page 568, Eddie Gray, reading the Logic User Guide. And yeah, now we, let's see, paste only the sends. So in the same vein, do you guys see the bus 130 and 131 down here? So I'm going to just copy these over to this guitar, just for fun, right? So we'll click there. I will copy the channel strip. We go down to this guitar here, go back up to the channel strip setting, and I paste not the plugins, but the sends only. And that brings over bus 130 and 131, just as I had here on track number 2. Okay, so we can copy and paste the plugins, right? The insert effects. If you want to remove any empty insert slots, we can do that now. This is kind of an exciting feature, new to 10.6. If we click here, we can remove empty insert slots. So Shift E, I'll just hit the key command for that. Shift E is going to take any slots that are currently open, and it just literally just slides up the plugin so that you're a bit more organized. So this can be something you do, you know, within the mixer like this. So I'll hit Shift E. Is there anything else? No, that's the only one. But let's pretend that this one had some space, you know, for whatever reason. Shift E, right? Just kind of cleans up my screen. You can remove bypass plugins. So in the case of this track right here, I can click and I can just go over to remove bypass plugins, and then all of them should be removed. Let's try that again. So not working on my end. Do me a favor and try it out on your end. It should work quite fine. Remove bypass plugins. There it goes. For some reason, it's not working on that track. Oh, wait, it did it after the fact. There you go. Okay. Let's go back up. Let me zoom back a little bit. Okay, remove all sends, and then you can reset the entire thing. So let's say I didn't like all the effects and the sends and everything. I could just click on the channel strip setting, and I can reset channel strip. And now again, the shaker is still in place. This has nothing to do with the track itself, the audio source. I'm talking about the channel strip as a whole. There's a difference. We need to make this differentiation between the track, which contains the regions, and then the channel strip, which contains the processing. Roger that. So then in this case, I want to color my drums red. And so I will hold shift, return, and call this shaker. Cool. All right, good. We can save these. So that's really nice. The way that I like to think about this is not official to Apple. Just want to be clear about that, is I like to think of my channel strip settings as the instruments and processes that I use the most. So I find myself using you know, a lot of bass processing, and a lot of this is experimental. Like I really want to try all these drum loop processes, right? I picked these up from somewhere. Single drum processing, right? And so these are settings that I would use the most often. Now this is for audio. Remember that you're going to look and see different information depending on what's in focus, right? I've talked to you about the heart of the program, right, is key focus. So when I'm on an instrument track, in this case, drum synth, new to 10.6, I click here, and now I have actual instruments that I can access. So At the moment, you're hearing drum synth. There's an 808 there. Let me play with the kalimba here. So here's Serum. Check this out. So let's say you're like, yeah, I want to try something else. Well, I have a couple of plucks here that I find myself using quite a bit. So let's go for pluck Omnisphere pluck, and let's see what that sounds like. So this is something that I created some time ago, and this allows me to now get a head start if I'm looking for a pluck sound. So if I look a little bit further, in fact, let's look at the library now. It's the same stuff that you contained in here. So these are my channel strips. I have channel strip settings pertinent to genres, right? Drums that I use, pianos that I use all the time. So rather than having to sift through those, it's already done. So let's listen to this kalimba now. Right, I'm pretty sure that's not going to sound as good as what I had before, so I'll just hit Command Z and take me back to Serum. Okay, so that's great. So that's how you save them. So let's say I was really into this one, then I would go to Save Channel Strip Setting, okay? And then it'll start showing up in the library. Conversely, if you don't like the channel strip, like, hey, you know what, this isn't working for me anymore, I want to delete it, you can do that. Okay, sometimes I misspell something, so I'll have to delete it, and you would do it in here. Hold on, let me try and find something like, boom. I don't see delete in here. Well, I know another way that you can do it is if you go into the library, you can just literally hit that delete button right down there. And that should get rid of it within the settings, so you no longer see it contained in your session. Yeah, what's interesting is it claims that it is here in the channel strip setting. I'll look one more time. I see reset. Yeah. Oh wait, it's right there. Delete. Why is it dimmed? That's such a strange thing. Let me look at the settings here. All right, first, maybe because this is, oh, I see what's going on. This is a saved channel strip. It's called Boutique Retro Fuzz, and so I am able to delete it. Whereas when you haven't saved it, I haven't saved this as a channel strip setting yet. So what we're looking at in the library is just where this instrument is, but that doesn't mean that I've saved it as a channel strip, right? If I go back, you can see, well, wait a minute, this is a patch though. Oh, okay, see, that's where the disconnect is. So I've saved this instrument, but it's not a channel strip, it's a patch. And that's where all this glue and griminess comes in terms of understanding, because it's like, well, when is it a channel strip and when is it a patch? What's happening is that we're right in the middle of a transition with Logic. Channel strip settings is the old traditional way that we used to save files, and then the technology started to broaden, started to expand greatly, and now not only do we have the capability of saving an instrument, but we have the capability of saving its volume level, so where it currently sits in the mix, right? Is it at positive 3 decibels, negative 5? Its panning position, we can also save sends, which we couldn't do with channel strip settings, and so this is the difference between these two. Rather than keeping both, I wonder why they didn't just replace one with the other. Again, I don't know all that. Hopefully one day we have a conversation with Apple and we try and understand the architecture. It must be challenging to let go of a behavior that a lot of people are using, and perhaps others are not. And so maybe they found it just easiest to keep both. Perhaps it's dependent on certain instruments. For example, Alchemy may use channel strip settings, and it's dependent on them, and patches is probably more of a user preset thing. I don't know. We will come to see what's going on here, but just know that there is a difference, and this is why I could not delete this from my system, because it is not a channel strip setting. It is a patch, and this is why I can delete it from the library. Okay. Saving a channel strip as a performance. So then now we start getting into this concept of performance, where we can literally save that as a performance. And what ends up happening is you have a performance folder that you can access as well. Okay, let's keep going here. Oh, in the dialog that appears, enter a performance name, choose a program change, and then click OK. We should actually look at that. So let's say I wanted this to be part of my performance. I would click here and click there. And it looks like you can save the name and then the program number. So when you do enter a MIDI event, and if you want to learn how I did this before, I did this inside of here. The event list editors. Look at the classes on the event list editor, and there was one specific video on screen sets where I changed the screen set, and I go over the same thing in that video. So it looks like we can change the performance over time. So like let me see, where's program change? I guess we would go here. Program change, and then you can insert it. You can literally change it. Can insert MIDI events into folders. Please create new region. So yeah, it has something to do with this, and you see how I inserted a program change inside of the event list editor. This is where you would do it. So send the program change number from your MIDI controller. So if you wanted to change it, it looks like you would have to hit something on your MIDI controller. Yeah, it's not that clear. I want to look at this a little bit later because I'm not getting enough information. It looks like you could just change it from here as well. That's wild. I don't know if this is actually going to do anything, but let's try it out, I guess. 11, I doubt it, but let's see. Yeah, nothing happened here. I was expecting a change inside of this menu, but didn't hear anything. So let's see if we can get some more information regarding how to change the performance over time. I know that obviously you could just hit the key command, but that's not necessarily going to work. So how do we insert the program change so that as this is playing, the process changes, right? So right now, let's see, we didn't save that. So let's see, performance, and I guess I'll just call this 1. Good, let's listen to this. And then if I created another one, how could we, maybe I take off the distortion just for now, where it gets clean, and we save this as performance number 2. All right. And then I guess I'll call this clean. So we'll look into this a little bit more. Stay tuned. I just don't see enough information on the screen but I'm sure there's a way to insert that change inside the event list editor. But again, I don't see anything in here. It just says send the program change number from your MIDI controller, right? So maybe if we go into the track inspector, but I don't see program change in here either. You see the MIDI channels, but yeah. So I believe this is something that has to take place in here. But again, this needs to be updated. I think that would be super helpful. Like if we changed, if I put the playhead there, we went to program change. I guess we click on that guy there. And yeah, like where are we changing it? That's kind of the question here. Yeah, okay, we'll play with this a little bit later. Yeah, so there's something there. There's some kind of connection that you can make. And why would you do it this way? To be honest, I wouldn't. I would just bounce it. If it's not flat out easy to understand, then I'm personally just not interested, because I can make it work if I just bounce it to audio. So again, what I would have done is just bounce this stuff to clean bass and then this stuff distorted bass, however you want to do it. Okay, how do we control the signal flow inside of the mixer? Well, this is when we start talking about routing. Okay, so when a plugin is inserted directly into a channel strip, it is termed an insert effect. All right, And of course, this is available to audio, to MIDI, to drummer, to everything, right? The entire signal is being processed by the effect plugin. Now, this behavior is suitable when we're talking about equalizers, filters, dynamic effects. If you have enough processing, you can use up to 15 insert effects, which is pretty remarkable. When multiple effect plugins are routed via an insert, they are set to be routed in series, okay, not in parallel. So this is actually good language for us to learn here. When you have a bunch of plugins lined up, such as you can see here, right? We have 1, 2, 3. We are processing in series. The output of one effect is added to the incoming signal and becomes the input of the next. So these are all in essence affecting one another, right? They are influencing how they are reacting. So if the compression is very light, right, it's going to kind of hit the EQ a certain way, which in turn will hit the chorus a certain way. Conversely, if it's really hard, it's going to like slam the EQ, and so you might have to apply, more intense processing for desired results. And then after that, you're going to influence how that signal goes into the chorus. The image below illustrates this process. Whereas when we're working in parallel, for example, here, track number 2, they're working kind of together. Two separate sound sources. We have the sound source here, but then we have this sound source, which is being added to the original. We also have bus number 2, which is also being added, and bus number 3. Eddie, why would I add 3 aux tracks and use parallel processing in this way? Because it's a lot more subtle, right? We talked about sweetening. There's a difference between gross, kind of visceral processing. It's all on the track. It's all affecting. And then you have bus processing, which is ever so slightly adding to a signal. Of course, you could be intense about it and raise up the signal all the way up. But generally speaking, this is just to sweeten the signal. All right, page 570 in the Logic User Guide. Hope you're enjoying yourselves, guide. Happy Friday. Let's go. Route audio via send effects in Logic Pro. Okay, so we know that we can use send effects as well. When do we want to do this? When you want to isolate effect plugins. So when you want it to be an isolated event, which you're adding on to the original source signal, or when you want to use the same effect on more than one channel strip. So this is now this becomes a bit of a organizational tool in this way. Like if we know we want to add reverb to the snare, to the hi-hats, and then to the guitars, it's like we'll add the same reverb just to kind of be efficient. Okay, because the reverb won't be defining the sound, right? It won't be a major player in your song, and so it can be subtle. It could just be a little wetness. It doesn't have to be the primary characteristic of the signal. So the channel strip's main signal continues its route to the chosen output. Of course, the bus processing, if you look at this illustration, it goes to bus 3 or wherever it's going, but eventually it ends up where? The stereo output. And so, of course, all of this will be processing here. And there are ways to not do that, where you're not actually running the signal through this. Because, if you use a mastering chain, then that's going to influence how all these reverbs and all these things behave. And that's not something you may want. So hopefully we can get into that within this session. The other part of the signal is routed down a parallel path. All right, so this is when we talk about, treating the signal in series and treating it in parallel. When we do the parallel processing, you use the send level knob. This is going to control the amount of signal that is sent to the bus. Parallel routing. So that's another term that we need to start using here. You can route the signal back into the main signal flow at a later point, or you can use the output signal from the aux channel strip. So that's interesting. We could then, if you wanted to, take this signal and route it back for whatever reason, maybe a feedback loop of sorts. That is one option. And maybe we should try it. We'll see how it goes. The advantage, like why you would want to do this, is predominantly efficiency. again, as I talked about the snare and the guitars and the hi-hat, we want to use the same reverb, right? It allows multiple channel strips to be processed by one inserted effect, which saves vast amount of processing power. You can't use a unique reverb every single time unless you have the best computer in the world, and even then, there are limitations. Another bonus is that you can quickly switch between wet and dry versions of all channel strips that are sent to an aux channel by simply bypassing. So that's another benefit. You can test it a little bit faster. It's a little more subtle. Similarly, you can completely change the effect configuration for multiple sent channel strips by choosing different effects for the aux channel strip. Yeah, so there's more room for experimentation as well. And we haven't even gotten into pre-fader and all this other stuff, which is really cool. The following image illustrates a channel strip routed to multiple aux tracks, and I already showed you what that looks like. Okay, page 571. Yeah, so you saw that it was routed into independent signals, and then those are sent back from the aux and combined into an output stream. Yeah, it's interesting how they phrase it this way. They're sent back from the respective aux. If by that they mean they go to the stereo out, then I understand. But it's not theoretically going back to the original one. So as I understand it, you can create up to 8 sends on each audio instrument or aux channel strip. No, this is I believe this is incorrect. I think it's 15, which I think they cleared up a little bit earlier, as you might have remembered. You use the send pop-up menu to configure where in the channel strip the send occurs, and then you set the destination for the parallel routing. You have 3 options for where the send can occur. So basically, now we're talking about the signal chain. Where is this going to go out? Is it going to go after the pan? Is it going to go after the volume fader or before the volume fader? And these all have pretty dramatically different results. To be honest, if you're a beginner, it's not going to make the biggest difference. This only makes a difference as soon as you start to get into that expert pro world, where you really start to, create big mixes, big changes. So don't worry about it too much, but definitely learn it. Okay. The signal is sent after the fader and the pan knob, and so when you do this, both the channel strip and the volume are affected. So the send signal is affected by the volume and the pan adjustment. So we're going to need to look at that. Let's see, where are we here? So going back to the drums. Let's do this guy, lots of reverb, and to be fair, we should bypass whatever processing we have here. Okay, so let's listen to this, just get familiar with the material. When I bypass it, it sounds like this. Okay, so now we know what we're working with. Okay, so when I click here, we see 3 options: post, pan. Okay, so again, now this processing is happening after the pan knob, and so what it says here is the send signal is affected by the adjustments to both the channel strip and the pan. So if I bring down, well, let's start with pan. If I move the pan all the way to the right, what's happening is that the pan, in fact, is also moving to the right. And the only reason I know that is because I'm looking at the channel strip itself right here. I can see clearly that it starts off with 2 signals. Now remember, this is being routed separately, right? And then as soon as I move this to the left, we no longer hear any reverb. So look at the channel strip. It starts off with 2 signals. So that means the reverb is playing on both the left and the right channel. And then again, when I pan to the right, it's only going to be on the right channel now. Check it out. Now, what's interesting is if I pan this to the left where there is no signal, you don't hear anything. It's just the original signal. Check it out. See, it sounds exactly the same. Okay, and there's more to be said, but let's keep going here. When it comes to post fader, let's see what the user guide has to say. It says, this is sent after the fader, but before the pan. So after the fader, but before the pan. And I know it's weird because you would think that the fader comes after, but it's not actually set up the way that you would think. In other words, this routing actually is different as it's coming out of the channel strip. So the volume comes before the fader, and so it says the send signal is affected by the volume adjustment, but not pan. So this is interesting because I could pan it every which way. It's not going to matter because the only thing that affects it is the volume fader. I'll show you what I mean. So here, post fader. Let's check out the pan. So now the pan is no longer affecting it, but the volume is. See, I brought the volume all the way down and there was no more signal. Right, because it's still in that position post fader. So so the volume affects it, but not the pan. And there are specific reasons why you would want to do this, which we can talk about later, but I just want to show you the behavior pre-fader. So then it says the send signal is affected by neither volume nor pan. All right, well, let's check that out. Pre-fader. Doesn't matter what I do to each, they're not affecting the signal. It's kind of isolated, kind of sitting in its own world. Let me close the library here. Okay, so I'll play with pan. So we're now just getting all of the effect. All we're hearing is this signal. We're not hearing anything else. We're not hearing any more of this stuff because I brought the volume fader all the way down. So by default, let's see, I think we set up to post fader in most instances. So post fader is affected by the volume, but not necessarily the pan. And why is that useful? Well, let's say you want to, here, I'll bypass this. You want to have some reverb like this. That's a very short reverb, right? But let's say you, not in this case, I would do it with guitars or something, but you wanted to pan the reverb just to the left channel. So you can do that because it will be influenced by the pan position. Hold on, let me check on that. I can treat the panning independent, whereas if I treat it here, I have no control. The reverb stays in the same place. So that's the benefit of just that default, is I can move the aux channel strip and I could pan it uniquely, so I have a little more flexibility there. There's a lot more information here. Again, a lot of this stuff we teach over at the Academy in full detail with diagrams and PDFs and sessions and all sorts of stuff. But that's a good introduction. So play with those just to get used to. Just a quick tip, I would use pre-fader when you want more of the effect and less of the original source sound. Okay, if we open the send menu, you know, we get this pop-up menu, and there's a lot of different stuff here that we should look at. So let's go ahead and get into that right now. Let's see. So we always need to send this somewhere. So now in Logic we have 256 from what I remember sends, which is amazing. I know a lot of DAWs only have like a couple, so this is incredible. And which number doesn't matter, right? They're just these open auxes. It really doesn't matter. So if I hit X, you can see I only have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is it 5? Oh, this includes the track stack because we know that this is also an aux track, remember? In fact, let me change this insignia just to make this crystal clear. I should go to other and we'll click that. Okay, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 aux tracks at the moment. If I select any number, again, doesn't matter, 32, another aux track is created, which is tied to bus 32, and we can see that number reflected right there, right next to the input format button, bus 32. Good. Oh, this is a really cool feature. new to 10.6, if you shift click the send, it's going to tell you where this is routed by flashing 3 times. Double clicking a send doesn't affect the current selection. I don't know what that means, but here, this is a really nice feature. Check this out. So if I shift click, let's say, and this really makes sense when you have a large session. This session is, just obviously a demo, but if I shift click bus 32, look at that, 1, 2, 3, it flashes over here on the screen. Let me highlight where this is happening on this track right here, my good friends. So let's try this again. Shift click 1, 2, 3. Isn't that great? So if you ever need to look for something, just shift click it and you should be good to go. I'll shift click the bus. You can see that, right? The stereo out. There it is right there. I just love that. Whoever thought of that, genius move. Because sometimes it does get a bit weighty and just over the top, and it's hard to tell what's what. So yeah, we've talked about all of this good stuff. When a send is in post, oh yeah, the something I did forget to mention is that they're gonna look a little bit different. For example, let me lift this up a little bit. When we're in post fader, right, that's a unique look. When we go to post pan, the order reverses, and then now this is green. So this is cool, like a visual representation. And then pre-fader looks a little different still from what I remember. What is post pan? Okay, so post fader. So yeah, they're all going to look a little bit different, just depending on how you have them set up. So post pan looks like that with the green. This is the same with the blue, and then pre-fader switches the order of that. Cool. 573. Okay, so there's something new, I believe it's 10.5, and it's called independent panning. Now it says here in the user guide that you may want to adjust the stereo pan that a send is routing to an aux separately. So like if it wasn't, deep or confusing enough, they kind of added this other element. Now let's be clear on why you would want to use this, right? Because not everyone will. Okay, and I'll give you usages for beginners and pros. For all the experts and pros, all my seasoned vets out there that are just crushing the game, you may want a stereo channel strip to a surround aux. So if you're using surround sound, this is an application. The other application is you're using sends to create a headphone mix, and you want separate pan positions. I don't know. You have a drummer and he wants to listen to the mix a certain way. I don't know. But if you want to mix this for a unique mix outside of the main session, then you can use this independent panning. Now that's it. That's the only reason that you would use these two, so far as I know. Right? I mean, that's what it says here. By choosing independent pan, you can adjust the pan type and position settings for them send independently from the pan type. Now, what's confusing about that for me is, can I just adjust it independently here? But what they're saying is that if you are sending, for example, let me do bus 130 right here. If you're sending this to a drummer's headphone mix while he's recording and he wants to hear everything from the drummer's perspective, I can actually control the panning of just this one send. Not the overall send, but just this one send. Okay, so you can actually position that for a headphone mix. Bus 130 still has its individual pan, as you can see, for my session, but the drummer is going to be listening to this a little bit differently. So I don't want to overcomplicate this, but let's keep it simple. If you're using surround, this is beneficial for you, and if you're using headphone mixes, this is beneficial for you. Otherwise, don't use it because it's just going to make your life a little bit more complicated. I guess the last thing that I'll say, if we're not using independent pan for all my beginners, the benefit of this, as I see it, is that rather than controlling this little, circle and kind of clicking up, it's a little awkward sometimes. You can just create your panning using faders. So this becomes a tool of convenience if you don't like using these sends. Now, again, this is not official. It's not what it says in the documentation. I'm just I'm always trying to think of the application for beginners, intermediate, and experts, right? Like how can you use this and how will this make your life better? Let's say you made all your decisions and you want to go back to normal. Just click on sends on faders and then you're all good to go. Yeah, let's continue on and let's wrap this up. So after, let's see, did we read all this? Yes, cool. All right, so you saw I clicked on independent pan, okay, and that brought up that whole world, right, of just like, where is this going to be? What's it going to look like? Let's see, independent pan. Okay, cool. So here it is right here. Now, that's not enough. You still are going to have to click, if you want to control the pan and all that, so you're going to have to click here on sends on faders. And then that kind of takes you to the next place as far as controlling that external headphone mix. There's two other features which are really interesting. Let's look at those. You can copy the current channel strip to the send. Now, why would you want to do this? Again, you want the drummer to listen to your mix the way you're listening to it, but maybe change a couple of things, right? Maybe he, I don't know, wants the vocals a little bit quieter, or the cymbals are too loud, the overheads are too loud, then you would use this. But if you did, you can choose copy pan to send. So it says here, you can copy pan settings from a channel strip directly. Using this command, you can quickly set panning for a send without having to first enter sends on faders mode. So yeah, this is a way for you to copy the setting to the bus. So let's say we had this panned over this way, and we'll say copy pan to send, right? And so that's one way of going about it. So let's do that. Let's try this. Copy pan to send. Okay, good. Let's see. And there's one more too. It's copy pan to send is only available in independent pan mode. So let's look at that. Yeah, this needs to be on in order for you to access these two settings. Finally, we have set sends on faders mode. From the send pop-up menu, choose sends on faders. Let's see. So I guess from here, sends on faders. Okay, so then now basically this is focusing the sends on faders mode on bus 131, right, or bus 130. Everything that has 130 is showing you what that current headphone mix is, if you will. Okay, so then I'll click here. Let's go copy the fader to send. Okay, so if I get out of here, turn that off. That's my setting. I'll go to -16. And then again, copy fade to send, and it's copying the mix decision that I made in terms of volume. It's copying it over. Does that make sense? So that just allows you to quickly make a headphone mix for anybody rather than having to remix everything over again for them. You've already made all those decisions, so you don't have to do them again. See page 575, same thing goes there. Okay, we're gonna stop here using aux channel strips. Wanted to thank you guys so much for another day. It's Friday, so I want to wish you the best Friday ever. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I will catch you guys tomorrow on a very special session when we cover all sorts of good stuff. What are we covering? Aux channel strips, mixing subgroups, sending signals to multiple destinations. So if you've never worked with routing, this is a perfect opportunity. And then it looks like we can output a single channel strip to 2 destinations. So why would you want to do this? Well, you're going to have to tune in to find out. And then we're going to talk about using multi-output instruments. And if we have time, we will cover surround sound as well. All right, guys. Hey, thank you very much for this opportunity to serve. I want you to stay up. I want you to stay grounded as well, right? Find that balance. And I will catch you guys tomorrow for another edition of the Logic User Guide. Stay happy, stay up. I'll see you guys later. Cheers.